Welcome to another episode of Some Random Thoughts. I am your host, Ryan Mulkowsky. On the program, I have a very special guest. His name is Chance Calloway. And so, Chance, thank you so much for coming on. He is a musician, a filmmaker, an author, but he's got a really cool perspective, and his work really highlights a very important group of people. And we want to just lift him up and really amplify his work and the population that he serves and that he highlights. So, Chance, thank you so much for coming onto the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on here.
Well, listen, this season, as you know, Chance, is the What's Your Passion season. And so I'm really excited about this in particular because really this is a guest centered season where this is not about me at all. This is about highlighting people that are doing really important, really awesome, creative, intelligent work. And really lifting your voice and really giving you a platform that you can talk more about your work. You are most well known for your show, Pretty Dudes, that has garnered a lot of attention, and we really want to focus on that and talk about that. But you also have a lot of other creative things that you want to talk about too that might have not gotten as much attention. So we're going to do that. But first of all, tell us just a little bit more about yourself, your background, where you came from, what makes Chance today. What is your background?
For sure. I mean, I can give you the Cliff Notes version, if that's
Yep.
even still a term people use. Yeah, I was born in Sacramento, California, and when I was 5, my family moved to the East Coast. I actually grew up in Brunswick, Georgia. Um,
Oh, really? All right. I'm an
yes,
Atlanta, Georgia guy, just outside of Atlanta. So
yeah,
that's
you're right there, like
right in the neck of
4 hour
the woods.
drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Brunswick, and that was a unique experience because my father actually is a pastor.
Okay.
And so I grew up as a preacher's kid, my sister and I. And Brunswick is in a unique location in Glynn County, Georgia. So it's a small town, but it's also a port city. And it has all these coastal islands that I'm sure you're familiar with: St. Simon's Island, Jekyll
Yeah.
Island, all that. They film movies out there. All the rich people live out there. So, at my high school, I'm going to school with the kids that live in the projects and the kids that live in the mansions. And it was such a unique experience. And as one of the few non-white kids that was in like the AP classes and things like that, you started to bond with all the other kids that weren't, the majority.
Right.
And that was kind of my first experience. It's kind of like, how like in the late 80s, early 90s, all the TV shows had like one of each. If you're talking about Captain Planet or Power Rangers or Saved by the Bell. And it was kind of
Yeah.
like, our lunch table, you had someone from Hong Kong, you had someone, who was Black, someone. And so I just got used to that. I got used to having conversations that were uh, initially uncomfortable, and then getting used to just reveling in our differences and finding humor and comfort in things that normally would be very uncomfortable. Uh, but also I was dealing with my own sexuality. So that was probably the one thing I don't think I had the safety net for back then.
Okay.
And so I tried a couple of things. I had some cool almost brushes with Hollywood because I wanted to, sing and act. Ended up going into the military for 4 years, which is the last person during that time. If you were queer, you should not have served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But because of my religious background, clearly I wasn't queer. Clearly this was just Satan tempting me. So,
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Yep.
so I didn't
Yeah.
think I would have a problem. Ended up coming out while I was in the military. It was an open secret. It was pretty traumatizing. I had a lot of friends who were that safety net that I didn't have growing up,
Yeah.
but I also was continuously being threatened with being outed to my superiors. So after 4 years, I got as far away as possible. I moved to Alaska. See, this is the Cliff Notes version. I
No,
lived in
it's good. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I was there for a couple of years. All the trauma kind of caught up with me. I've since been diagnosed with like a CPTSD and my anxiety and my depression. But I just knew at the time I had to get out of Alaska, and I was I had a really great job, and I had no social life whatsoever. And these two performers, Dante Bosco, who a lot of people know as Rufio from Hook, or Prince Zuko from Avatar, and the singer named AJ Raphael, they were trying to raise funds to produce this musical. And I was like, what? Like a musical? Like all like Filipino singing, dancing musical? This sounds cool.
Yeah.
So I donated to their campaign. Apparently, it was a significant enough amount that they called me. They asked for my phone number to call me, and they were just like, this makes you a producer on the project. Like, this is so cool. Like, like, why did you decide to support our project? And I think in that moment, on that phone call, I kind of realized what I wanted to do with my life was to highlight stories like this.
That's awesome.
So end of the week, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I moved to LA. Typical to how LA works, the movie ended up not being made,
Uh,
which is fine. I became friends with Dante and AJ, and then I just started my filmmaker career. That's how we got here.
that's amazing.
Isn't that
And it's
wild?
also amazing too because every single person, I feel like, for the most part, when you're growing up, you think it's your life's going to go one direction, but then your life can just take a completely different turn at a moment's notice. And I think a lot of what we want to highlight in this series too is, even through the ups and the downs, how did you still keep on going, right? Because you've just already expressed, really tumultuous moments in your life, difficult moments, and then also really uplifting, awesome, positive moments. And so, for you, coming out, that's a whole ball of wax right there. That's a whole complex type of movement for a human being to come out. And especially when you don't have the safety net, or if you maybe have some minimal support, it can be even more difficult. What do you think got you through that transition from being more closeted into being more open? And how has that informed your work currently?
Sure. I mean, the main thing for me was the first time I fell in love.
Okay.
Because the stigma about sexuality, of course, isn't that first syllable sex. Everyone kind of focuses on that part,
Mm,
the sinful aspect of it, the
mm,
unnatural aspect of it, and everything. So when you're going through puberty and you're figuring that kind of stuff out, everything feels dirty. I think even like straight people feel dirty when you're going through
mm.
puberty because everything's just like everything's gross and new and
Yeah.
weird and sticky
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and I
Yep.
think once I fell in love, the purity of that emotion recontextualized the whole concept of sexuality for me.
Mm,
That was when I understood that it wasn't just about this moment of feeling good. It was about just a truly like how do you connect with another human being.
mm,
And then thankfully I had friends who just would not leave my side. Like literally, like if I was having a depressive episode, they
mm.
would not leave my dorm room. Like they would just sleep on the floor next to my bed, and just make sure
Wow.
that I was okay, that I made it through the night. And that's the kind of I guess I don't know if tribalism is the word I want to use, but there is something about um societies like the military that can have their negative and their positive. And I think the positive thing is that idea of like, no, like you are someone who's important to me. I'm going to make sure that we make it through. And I think that definitely was probably something that made me understand my queerness and how I wanted to be like how I wanted to accept it. Because I'm thinking if these people who I love, if they're able to accept it, then I should be able to accept it.
Mm,
And for me, I think that definitely carries over into my art now because even though there's a lot more representation, especially of queerness and queer people of color and queer Black people specifically, I still know that there's people like me out in some small town somewhere who have to change the channel when their parents walk in,
wow.
or have to hide books in the back of the closet. I know that still exists. And also I feel like a lot of times still mainstream sexuality representation is still focused on uh the naughtiness, and you can frame that however you want, like there's a place for all of it. And I kind of like to run the gamut. I love to produce things that are, I mean, my humor is very raunchy, so okay, I already got the naughtiness checked off, but then also something that, what about queerness in the Black church? I like to explore those kind of
Okay.
things,
Okay.
because there's not enough of that, I feel. Yeah, so that, I think that answers your question.
No, it definitely does. And what I really love is you've highlighted so many different areas that intersect with each other. And that's the thing about the human experience that's so beautiful and rich and also messy and complex, is that everything intersects and everything intertwines. I think sometimes we like to be oversimplify things or put things like in a silo, like in everything in a box. Like mental health goes in like one box, and then your sexuality goes in another box, and then your family dynamics go in another box, and how you interact interact with other people, but everything really just gels together and
Yes.
makes things complex. And so for you as a storyteller, as an author, as a filmmaker, what are some of the ways you really like to craft stories? So I want to kind of talk about how you approach your craft because you started highlighting that with a lot of the contextualizations and a lot of the intersections. But really, what's your approach to art?
Well, I'm big on ensemble pieces, in almost everything, whether I'm writing a novel, whether I'm writing, a screenplay, because for me, again, it kind of ties into my experience like in high school and such. The idea of having other perspectives to bounce off of, to challenge your own, I think not only makes you a good person, but also makes good art. I really cannot wrap my head around these homogenized ensembles that are really popular in media now.
Mm,
I feel like in the 70s and then like in the 90s, there was some really good works that challenged perspectives and brought in these, so you're able to laugh at someone who's bigoted because they're not telling you that that's the right point of view. They're being challenged.
yeah.
And now it's just kind of like a bunch of a bunch of people who are the same, who have all the same opinions about everything,
Mm,
you know, and the humor doesn't really come out of the budding of personalities or the budding of perspectives. The humor comes out of things that are just misunderstandings in communication, like, oh no, I told you I was going to get you this present and now I'm going to lie for the next 30 minutes or the next 2 hours. So for me, the number one thing is creating an ensemble, creating characters that are going to challenge each other. um and then from there, it's kind of like, okay, well, then what's the story? Because now that I know who these characters are, I let the characters tell me where they want to go. uh,
mm.
no matter what the genre is. I love writing in all kinds of various genres, but it's kind of like, okay, are they going on a quest? Are they is this something maybe a little more domestic? Like what's the story here? How do I take these people and maximize the return on their personalities? That's really where I like to start.
That's awesome. So character driven. So the characters really get developed before the story gets developed, and you
Oh
allow the
yeah.
characters to. That's really cool. That's really interesting because I mean, every time I've talked to someone who's an artist or a creator in that vein, it's really interesting to hear how some people are very story driven and narrative driven, and then some people are very character driven. So I love that your work is very character driven and that the characters really form the story and make the environment and the setting and the plot and everything. So that's really cool. Well, let's go into talking about your work that you're most known for, Pretty Dudes. So tell us about how Pretty Dudes came to fruition, how that got birthed, and how that has grown to be what it is today.
Yeah, I love Pretty Dudes because it's something I just kind of made on a whim that turned into, I guess, my calling card now. I was editing a film with some friends and I got high for the first time. And they asked me, like, if you could do anything in the world, like if you could make any kind of project, what would you make? And I went onto this like long monologue about the type of show I would write about a group of friends in LA and how some of them would be queer, and just riffing off of my favorite kind of tropes, which is the living singles, the Golden Girls,
Mm,
those kind of shows.
yep.
And then months later, I was in production on a short film. It was a dark horror film, and I had a tragedy in my personal life. My brother suddenly passed away, and I
Oh
just
my
kind of
goodness.
felt like I don't want to I don't want to do anything dark right now. I want to make something fun.
Mm.
And so I thought of that idea that I had come up with months before and said I'm going to make that. And I'm very instinctive like that. Some people might call it impulsive. I like to reframe it as
I
instinctive.
like your reframe. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes. So I wrote a script, and then we started casting. I literally I did it completely backwards. Like I started at the top of the pyramid and worked my way down, and we put it together over. It was about a year and a half, but like we only filmed for like 20 days, and we made 19 episodes.
Wow.
Uh, and I just put it out there. Like I didn't understand I was supposed to shop around to festivals or streamers. I didn't know any of that. I wanted to make this. It's done. I dropped it on YouTube, and it just took off. And I'm so proud of it to this day, and it still just feels like a continuing miracle because people are still watching it. We went viral on TikTok during the pandemic, and I don't understand like who's making videos about my show, my little show that could. But yeah, that show to me, I really wanted to just kind of show a group of characters that I wish I could have watched on TV,
Wow.
and that's what I made.
Wow, that's awesome. So really it was about I'm not seeing this represented and I want to represent it. I could either wait around for somebody else to do it or I can just do it. So I love your instinctive, go-getting, kind of self-starting like, let me just do it. Like if this is a passion of mine, why should I wait around? Let me just do it. And it sounds like you went with that and it really paid off. Tell us a little bit for those who haven't seen it or haven't heard it or are not familiar. Tell us a little bit about maybe the characters, how you developed those characters, and maybe overall, maybe some of the overarching themes of the show.
Sure. Yeah. So the concept, the synopsis basically is that there's there's a gay character named Zario, Hector Del Rosario, who is going through a depressive spell because he just had a really bad breakup with his boyfriend,
Mm,
and all of his straight friends, or straight at the time, decide to enter a bet to find him his next boyfriend. So it's kind of like this clash of cultures where all these straight characters are trying to understand, gay culture and gay lingo, as they're like basically shopping around to find him like his next boyfriend. And it was important to me to have a character like Zario, because I like to say I'm an optimist with depression, because Zario is someone who presents as very positive, but the people that know him know that he just swings to the dark side so easily.
mm,
And then I also liked this community of friends around him who all had different backgrounds, because again, that's my experience. And also because I was in the military and a small town in Georgia and then Alaska, a lot of my friends up until recently solely identified as straight. And
mm.
people just did not understand that about me. I'm like, where was I going to find a gay community in the places that I was?
Right,
You know?
right. Yep.
But now that I'm, in my 30s, so, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been repealed. A lot of my friends have been coming out as queer. So like some things in my past have started to make more sense. But for Zario, at the time, I just kind of wanted to show true allyship. And also, again, the humor that can come out of a situation like that.
Yep.
And so I surrounded him with different types of straight people, like the well-meaning homophobic people, the questioning people, the closeted people, and then just the people who are just straight and just like honestly, genuinely see you as another human being, and like, yes, I want you to be happy. I'm going to help you be happy, even if this makes me uncomfortable. Because why does it make me uncomfortable? It shouldn't make me uncomfortable. Let me work that out of myself to make sure that I'm going to show up for you as a friend.
One thing that I really appreciate about what you've described about your work that you described earlier and have kind of described now is how you're really trying to not do this, for lack of a better term, like tribalistic, where it's just one type of person and everyone is the same and everyone believes the same thing and does the same thing. And there's no conflicts, there's no nuance, there's no difference of opinion, there's no trying to show how two different people, if they can have shared common values or just shared humanity, can really form intimate, close either relationships or friendships. So I really appreciate you highlighting that because I don't think we see that enough in modern production. It's just always like either we have this one group of people that's punching down on every other type of person that's not like them, or if there are differences, they're so one dimensional in characters and they don't grow and they don't have any kind of change of heart or change of perspective, that it just kind of seems kind of dull and just kind of like one note and nothing's ever really progressing in an interesting way. It seems like you were really trying to buck against all of those trends that were happening in modern production and modern art, which is really trying to highlight nuance, trying to highlight difference of opinion, trying to highlight how all these different people can actually come together and really support one another. So I really want to highlight that part of your work. I think as really much needed and interesting, and hopefully that your influence can help other writers and other storytellers and authors really find the confidence to be able to have those kind of pieces of work, because it does get tiresome, at least for me as a viewer, as a consumer, because that's what I am. So I'm not like you. I'm not a creative storyteller. I'm not a writer. I'm not a screenplay. So if as a consumer, it does get really kind of dull when I just see like the punching down thing, especially like let's just make fun of straight people. because straight people are dumb or straight people are ignorant or straight people are this or that. I think some of it's needed. I think you need to have some of that calling out and some of that challenging and some of that, hey, your perspective is not okay or it's harmful. I'm not saying, completely ignore it, but at the same time, try to show some ability for redemption through human connection. I think
Yes.
can also be really important. And I think could also provide much more healing, right? Like if the whole goal of humanity is to try to come together despite our differences for a shared vision or shared values or shared beliefs that we can all rally against. I mean, not against, but all rally for, then I think our world would be a much better place instead of, I think, the constant divisiveness and conflict that we're seeing. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Oh, you said a whole word right there. Not to sound too much like a pastor's kid, but like there is there is definitely something that's different in like modern media where it's kind of like, well, we're just better than everybody else. Like no matter what the perspective is, and then that's it. Like that is from the opening frame to the last frame. That's all you learn about these people is that oh, they're better than everybody else. Whereas the more nuanced storytelling, no matter the genre, no matter if it's a comedy or an action adventure or whatever, the characters are challenged and go on this growth journey that isn't just I'm the same person, I'm just going to achieve my goal but still be the same person at the end.
Mhm.
That's the difference. People like to do that whole this could never be made today, and that's not the truth. The truth is I think modern day filmmakers and storytellers are too lazy
Mm,
to make it. Like something
wow.
like a Blazing Saddles or the Jeffersons or almost anything Norman Lear. It's not just I'm going to offend you, ha ha ha. It's look at this person who's out of touch and look at how the story develops when their perspectives and their bigotries are challenged. And that's so
Mm.
much more fascinating and that's so much more rewarding as a viewer. And in my opinion, also as a writer, like I want to see what challenges this character because I want to be challenged. Otherwise, why am I putting my energy, my resources into telling this story if it's not going to change me as a person or potentially change the people who are consuming it?
You just said something really incredible and I think very important, which was your belief that things can be made. It's just that people are too lazy to want to make it. Because that's what I've always heard as a consumer when I've watched people talk about crafting and about making art in Hollywood, which is no, we can't do that. We can't talk about that. We can't approach that subject. We can't approach that type of character. We can't do those things. I just hear inability, but you're saying it's not inability. You're saying from your experience, it's laziness. And I'm
Absolutely.
just like, you blew me away with that because I was just like, I didn't think it, I thought people weren't so lazy to do. I thought it was people just didn't want to sign up on those projects. So tell me about, you mentioned Norman Lear, and I do love Norman Lear. Tell me about inspirations for you. Tell me about people that you have looked to that
Yeah.
have kind of informed your art because I think we're all inspired by other people, right? Like I know I have inspirations in my body of work and in my craft that I'm like, these are the people that I look to. These are my inspirations. Who are your inspirations?
Robert Townsend, number one.
Okay.
Uh, I love Robert Townsend as a filmmaker, especially because he's so skilled at jumping between genres.
Mm,
He can do a mockumentary, a musical drama, superhero film. He's so talented. Eddie Murphy Raw. I'm just like, how you just do everything. I
yep.
love Robert Townsend. Corey Jefferson is a screenwriter now that I'm just really falling in love with ever since his work on Watchmen, the HBO series.
Yep.
Um, and I look to a lot of modern filmmakers, really like Ava DuVernay and Jordan
Mm,
Peele, Ryan Coogler,
mm,
Barry Jenkins, because there are very few filmmakers who like just wreck me. Like I just watch their films and I'm just inconsolable afterwards.
yep.
And they are absolutely like, on my list. And then I'm so gay. I have to say, like Carol Channing, I love Judy Garland, I love Cab Calloway, I adore Gene Kelly, just the people who can take whatever medium they're working in and just transform it to something magical. That's just everything to me. Like I love it when I can just If I know that a name is attached to a project and I know that this person is going to just take me somewhere that I've never been before. Yeah, I would
That's
say.
all. Those are all really great names, and I like that there was some diversity in there. But you've highlighted a lot of Black voices, which is great. I mean, so for you, what has been the most rewarding thing you've seen when it comes to Black and Brown and other historically minority voices getting their shot to produce and create and get their work seen? What has been some of maybe the most important pieces you've seen come from these voices?
Oh yeah, it's like trying to find that balance between I guess the whole hustle culture that we live in as a capitalist society,
Mhm,
and also um not letting the culture like run you into the ground.
mm,
Ava's recently, been talking about the journey that she's taken with Origin and how there was another studio that was willing to make it, but they would have waited. But she said, no, this needs to come out before the election. And so she went with
mm,
another studio based on that. And it's about the fact that because, people from marginalized communities and backgrounds don't have as many options. I think it's so easy for people to kind of sit in the comfort of their home and like pass judgment on production value and quality of things like that. And it's kind of like, no, but we're not getting the same opportunities. And so I love hearing the kind of stories from these people who I would say, oh, they've made it. Like, oh wow, they've done amazing things. And then just knowing the hard conversations that they're having to have. And I appreciate that now there's like this trend of like not keeping it behind closed doors, like going
yeah,
public.
yeah,
No matter if it villainizes you in the short term, like someone like Monique, who's been speaking out about pay disparity, Taraji P. Henson, who is risking her career right now talking about pay disparity.
mm,
I love that because so many people don't understand how real it is out here, how the expectations are different if you are a woman, if you are queer, if you are disabled, if you are not white. Um, and I'm really glad that more people are speaking out about that kind of stuff. And so I like to look at people like that. Also, older filmmakers like Charles Burnett, and there's another guy from like the 1920s, 1930s whose name I cannot think of right now, but he's a Black filmmaker who
okay,
basically was like the OG Spike Lee, the OG like Tyler Perry, because he just made it with his own budget, and then he traveled around the country showing it to audiences,
wow,
uh, and making his money that way because there's a demand for it, but the people in the offices are going to tell you that there isn't a demand for it. They say the same thing about quote unquote Black films, or even just having a Black actor in the lead role, that those things don't sell to international audiences. And that's disproven over and over and over again.
mm,
But that's still something that they say. They also say that, women-led movies don't sell tickets. But that's also disproven over and over and over again.
yeah,
But it's the
right,
same, again, homogenized storytellers, in this case, these boardrooms full of white men of a certain age
mhm,
who make all the decisions, and no one's challenging them because everyone in the room has the same perspective that they have. And so then you have the people on the ground, like me, like other filmmakers like Gerardo Maravilla, and all these wonderful independent filmmakers, Rain Valdez, who are just out here, having to crowd fund, having to ask for favors, and then putting out some of the best art that you've ever seen. And then the next time they're ready to do it, they have to start from scratch again. And to know that the same thing is happening with someone like Ava DuVernay, and that the same thing is happening with someone like Barry Jenkins, it's sad, but it's encouraging to me because it's
yeah.
like, okay, well, this is what I'm in for. Okay, I know I'm gonna buckle in. Let's
I
go.
like that. I like that. So it's people having the courage to be able to say these things are happening. And you mentioned incredible artists like Monique, like Taraji P. Henson, like Ava DuVernay. Um, Notice all Black women, right? And the
Yes.
confidence that these Black women have of not giving a what, but saying, hey, look, this is happening. This is not okay. And we're going to continue to highlight and we're going to continue to use our platforms, our influence that we work so hard to build
Yes.
to say that this is not okay and to really elicit change. Can you tell me your perspective really quick then on the writer strikes and the actor strikes that have happened recently? And what was your perspective on that? What was your involvement in that, if you had any involvement? I'm just curious, as an artist, as a writer, as a filmmaker, how did you see all of that go? What was your perspectives and beliefs on that?
One, it was necessary. I fully support the strikes that occurred last year with the WGA and the and SAG. I'm not a member of a guild,
Okay.
so I didn't have like direct stakes in it, but it's
Mhm.
important, I think, for all industries, because there are labor strikes happening in so many industries right now.
Yep.
There's a giant reckoning that's happening. There's just so many people who are hoarding the resources, um, and it's I know so many actors and so many writers, and I know what their day-to-day life is.
Mm.
And then just to think that there's someone at the top who's getting, these bonus checks for obscene amounts of money, and then telling
Yep.
people, oh, you're asking for too much. Like
Mm. Mm.
that's such a disconnect. And I think that it really kind of just tells the type of society that we live in. I mean, that goes beyond art, right? That these are just people who are using capitalism
Correct.
um, for their own gain.
Yep.
Uh, and you can argue the points of capitalism, and that's not that's, to me, that's not important. The matter is that there are people who are letting greed not only direct the course of art, but direct the course of lives. There are people out
Wow.
here
Yep.
who are giving their all and their last um, to put money in the pockets of somebody who won't even be able to spend all that money in their lifetime.
Mm.
Yeah, that's my outlook. I feel like, I mean, because AI, of course, is a problem we definitely need to put some kind of hampering on, some kind of tampering down of that. But there's so many other things that the strikes accomplished, and I feel like it's still not enough. I'm not saying the strikes, I'm not saying that they should still be going, but I mean,
Right.
this is just a step.
It's a
There's so,
start. Okay.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
is not an end to you. You think there's gonna, in the future, be continued deliberations, conversations, possible strikes in the future if the people that are in charge of these guilds do not abide by the terms of the people. And so,
absolutely,
okay. Yeah, and I don't want to belabor the point of capitalism either, but there is a lot of problems with the modern capitalistic perspectives, especially in the West and in the United States, which is the perspective we're talking about when it comes to just the massive amounts of inequality of wealth and how it's concentrated on levels, right? Instead of being spread out evenly.
right,
Um, and I agree with you that one of the major problems I have with the way modern capitalism is framed is that concentration is going to people that aren't doing the actual work, right? So
right,
when you're talking about Hollywood, the creators, the people that are representing the art, so like actors, writers, and all of the crew members. And I like that you mentioned the crew members as well. Sometimes we forget about, the people that are doing the audio and the video, and we forget about all of the people that are involved, assistants, right?
right,
That
yep,
that make that stuff happen. And yet, like you said, the execs are getting all the big fat bonus checks, but they didn't do anything to create the art. They had no hand in the actual production that is making the money, that is
right,
making the bonuses that are going to the execs instead of it going to the writers. Like,
right,
if I'm writing something and I'm creating something and it's a massive success, why should you at the top get all of the money and I get pennies on the dollar? And I'm the
exactly,
one that actually made the money for you. And so
exactly,
I totally agree with that perspective. And listen, for me, honestly, I heard a lot of people just from different circles complain about the strikes. Oh, we're not going to get any new material. We're not going to get any new art. We're not going to get any new this. I'm like, listen, as a consumer, if you're so worried about your favorite show coming out, but you're not worried about the people that are making that art, what does that say about you? And what does
right,
that say about your perspective? Um, are you really that selfish that you can't wait until they get better bargaining agreements and that they get
exactly,
paid their fair share? Like, honestly, like, in the end, these artists should not be exploited for their labor. And that's the thing about modern capitalism anyway, is the continued exploitation of labor,
right,
right? That the laborers are getting crumbs and the
Right.
people that aren't actually producing anything are getting the bread. And so I appreciate you sharing that because you're independent. And tell me about your decision with Pretty Dudes in particular, about why you wanted to just release it on YouTube and just get your art out there, as opposed to, like you said, doing what a lot of other people traditionally do, which is to try to pitch it to networks, streaming services, other financiers, people that could help you get your show on more traditional means of production, whether it's network television or broadcast television or cable or streaming. What made you just want to get it out there, as opposed to going those other routes?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably two big reasons. First, I didn't think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like initially it was just kind of like I equated to just like making films in the backyard with your friends, like on a,
Mhm.
on a camcorder. That's what it was on a much larger scale for me. It was just like, this is a story I want to tell. I'm working with these fantastic people, and let's just do it. But then once I did kind of start, I guess, teasing the waters to see, like, hey, like, what do you think? Like, hey, take a look at this trailer, take a look at this footage that we've shot. And a lot of the industry feedback I was getting was that my show was too something. And it was never anything that anyone ever agreed on. It just depended on what their perspective was. It was too gay. It
Okay.
was too straight. It was I need to make the lead character white. That, of course, that's a textbook.
Really? Is
Oh yeah.
that was one of the criticisms, that you need to make the lead character white? Someone
Yes.
actually like said that to your
That's
face?
that's what producer told me. Yep,
Oh
yep, yep,
my gosh, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, you think I'm like, what is this, 1964?
Yeah.
I don't what kind of feedback is this?
I am
Yeah,
floored. This is like,
yeah. It,
wow.
it's it's still, yeah, it still shocks me. Also, and this one's kind of interesting. I was told that my show was too Asian.
Mhm.
And that's just, again, by the nature of my initial connections in Hollywood were two Filipino
Mhm.
entertainers. And so when I was casting for this, a lot of people in the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, they were coming to these auditions. So we just had a surplus of people from
Yeah.
those communities auditioning. So we end up with a surplus of those people in the cast, which to me isn't a problem, because that's just what happens sometimes in life, right? But people who didn't have any kind of like Asian background were like, oh, is this like an Asian show? Because half of our leads were Asian. And it's just like, it's just a show. Like, how come if the majority of the cast is white, no one ever says something like, "Oh, so this is a white show"?
Yes.
They
Yes.
only do it with non-white characters.
Yep.
If you have multiple black characters, oh, so it's a black show, and it becomes ghettoized, like in that sense.
Mm.
And so that was the kind of feedback I was getting. And I just realized, well, I'm not gonna. I almost cussed. I'm sorry. I was like, I'm not. I'm like, no, screw
It's
that.
okay.
Like, I'm not
It's okay.
gonna.
Yeah.
Those aren't the kind of notes that I'm gonna apply. Like, if you had something of quality, that you wanted to give me, like if you wanted to say, oh, I think, maybe you should focus more on this, or the plot could use some this kind of fine tuning.
Okay.
But those weren't the notes I was getting. It was all about optics, and it was
Mm.
all about catering to the systemic majority, and that for me was not. They have enough. There's enough stuff out
Mhm.
there for
Mhm.
people who think that my show is too gay. There's enough out there for people who think that my
That's
show,
absolutely right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
100%.
that's why I didn't want to go those routes. I do think some of it was naivete. I do think I probably could have gotten a really nice streaming deal if I had played festivals. But I just wanted to put my show out there.
I like your transparency and your introspection on this, and that you're saying that, I had a part maybe to, if I went this direction, it could have gone differently, but at the same time also highlighting the challenges that I think a lot of creatives like you have when it comes to trying to present your work to y- historical means of producing things, right? Like production companies and financiers and things like that. It's so incredibly disingenuous, though, to me, that you got all of those feedbacks about optics, because I can think of movies that have majority black cast, majority Asian American cast. Um, is it just because you think your show didn't fit any kind of mold? Do you feel like your show was so differentiated from a lot of other uh maybe shows that have minority populations in it? Um because I mean there's just so much content with minority populations in it. I could think of just shows and movies where
Yeah.
vast majority of the cast are black, or the vast majority of the cast are Asian, or the vast majority of the cast are Middle Eastern, or of Arab origin, or it's just it's like puzzling to me. Are you still puzzled by like some of that, or do you just feel like you're really making something that's so different and so unique and doesn't fit these traditional norms that you're like, okay, this is why I'm getting kind of resistance?
I feel like, I mean, I would love to say that, I'm breaking the mold with what I do,
Okay.
but I don't think I am at all. I
Okay.
just feel like I lucked out. We have a Power Ranger in our cast. I looked into finding an audience, but I'm sure that, in the far reaches of YouTube, there are other people who are doing something similar, you know. Just like, there was Issa Rae before me, like there are people who are making this art that just haven't found their audience yet.
Okay.
Um, I would say the first part of your question, I'm not surprised, because when you look at things like that happened with like the changeovers with some of these companies,
Hmm.
uh, and how they'll just toss a project like Batgirl that had an Afro Latina as the
Hmm.
lead role, that
Hmm.
had a fat actor as a lead role, that had a trans Asian woman as as a character, and an Asian love interest. But then their statement says something like, we don't see the value in a film like this.
Mm.
And I'm just kind of like, I don't know if there's ever been something like that. Movie would have broken the mode,
Yeah.
but
Right.
but that becomes a tax write-off again for a board full of, I mean, where they literally kicked off all kinds of people from diverse backgrounds and then replaced them all with old white men.
Mm.
And you guys are going to tell me that there is nothing. So no, I'm not surprised. I
Right. Right.
wish I was, but no,
Yes. Right. Right.
that's 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 how it goes.
Yeah. Tell me about maybe some of the other work you're doing. No, actually, let me rewind it. Let's talk about the positives. Let's talk about the audience that has found
Yeah.
your work. And tell me
Yes.
about some of the feedback you've gotten. I don't want to hamper on the negatives too long because I know your work is amazing and I want to celebrate your work. This is what this podcast is about, right? Optimism, right? Let's talk about the
Yeah.
optimism. So tell me about the audience that has found your work. Tell me about some of the feedback you've gotten and some of the feedback that you really have treasured the most.
Yeah, I have I have a folder full of screenshots from back in the days when I was on Twitter, because and Tumblr back, that's ages ago.
That
Um,
kind of dates us a little bit, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, where people would just send me these messages about specific characters or storylines or episodes, and they would say, thank you so much. I went through something similar. I never thought that I would see this represented, or I never thought I'd be able to laugh at my own trauma like this, and
Mm,
you found humor in it. Um, from all different backgrounds. Something that really touched me were straight people who were coming to me saying that the show made them understand the queer people in their life in completely different ways, and made them reach out, to like their siblings or like their cousins or their friends, or people connected with the show were calling me or sending me texts telling me that because they were involved with Pretty Dudes, someone in their life realized that they might be a potential ally and then came out to them.
wow.
So like those kind of things to me definitely outweighed all the BS of, me having to navigate Hollywood. It was kind of like, oh wow, like this is what art is for. It goes beyond just like, it's not that I did it, it's that, okay, cool, all of the art talents pulled together to make this show
Mm,
created a safe space for this person that I'm probably never going to meet, that I may never know. There was someone who had said that they had had an experience with attempted suicide,
mm,
and that they're really glad that they didn't go through it, because something that helped them heal after the process was watching the show. You don't you don't sit down and write a script and think, oh, I'm gonna save someone's life. That's not your brain when you're, I'm just writing jokes about a group of friends, going through life. And then to see someone who says that the show impacted them that positively, and
yeah.
then to know that
Yeah.
art has done that for me
Yeah.
in my life,
Right.
and to realize that, now something that I've been a part of has done that for someone else. That's huge for me. That's
Mm,
huge for me.
mm.
Um, I was on a panel at Comic-Con maybe 2 years ago. Uh, of all things, Pretty Dudes got me onto a panel at Comic-Con 2 years in a row. And
Congrats.
isn't that cool? Yeah, and
That's so cool.
yeah. When I was a kid, I wanted to write Batman movies, so I was knew I would be at Comic-Con, but I thought it would be like for Batman. So for it to
Right.
be Pretty Dudes, that was wild. And I was on a panel with someone who, when I introduced myself, he said, "Wait, Pretty Dudes?" And like he asked me, like, in the microphone, and he's like, "You mean with, like, with this actor?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, you know my show." And afterwards, I asked him about it. And he's on the asexual spectrum, and he has a Filipino background, and he was just like, "Yeah, like, everyone in the community has just been passing the show around, like, hey, have you seen this?" And I was just like, I just couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I
Yeah.
just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the moments where it feels bigger than me, and it makes everything feel worth it, the good and the bad, because I'm just like, that's pretty badass. That's pretty
It
badass.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It's also really cool that you were able to get that kind of feedback, and then you started realizing, wow, this is going further than I thought. Like, what
Yes.
a really cool, neat thing for you to just go, I thought it had this impact, but it's actually having this impact.
Right.
And that it's impacting people on different levels, like all the way from just, wow, it's just cool to see a show that represents me and kind of represents my life and background, all the way to I was in a really deep, dark place and really contemplating really dark things, but then you were able to bring light into my life that really was transformative. And now I feel like, I can move forward in a more positive way. That's incredible that you're able to use your art to touch people in so many different levels in so many different ways. And most importantly, I think to really represent people that haven't been represented, and that you're seeing m- uh historical media saying no, we don't want to represent that because we don't see the value in it, when you're saying no, there is value in it, and I'm going to have enough self-respect for myself and my work to go, you know what, if you don't want to touch it, I'm going to put it out there anyway because I know that my work has value. So um, do you see that being one of the major positives of digital media of the modern age? Because a lot of people want to focus on a lot of the negatives of like social media and modern means of self-production, but there are some positives there. And I think one of the positives of social media and of modern ways of producing and how much easier it is to do independent filmmaking or just independent art and get yourself out there. Is that there are mechanisms for that. So, what have been some of the positives for you when it comes to the digital age and modern media and getting your work out there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it, right? Because there's so many performers who, got their start, with
Mm,
digital media, like Donald Glover, like Issa Rae, India Moore, people who probably wouldn't have had the kind of opportunities that they have if it wasn't for that. And for me, yeah, the way to be able to directly access my audience, to see their comments in real time, I think that's huge. Back in the day, like, that stuff would get filtered through the studio system,
mm.
but I have direct contact with my audience, and that's huge for me. I think I'm always trying to balance it out, right? Because I feel like a lot of times my budget doesn't match my vision.
Don't
um,
we all? Don't we
right.
all? Don't we all? I
Yeah.
think you're in a company of great people that feel the same way about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so it's like so part of it is kind of like the idea of like, okay, let me make sure that just because I can put it out there, let me make sure that it's of a certain level before I put it out there. That was a lesson I learned on season one, because you could just see over the course of the first couple of episodes how like it got better. Like behind the scenes, we started
Yep.
figuring out, oh, this is how we do it.
Yep.
Um, but I think that having that direct contact with the audience, also being able to see my own numbers, that way next time when I'm talking to someone about a potential deal or something, I know my worth. I don't
Mm,
have to guess what my
mm,
worth is,
mm,
which I think is a difference with some of these streamers are very opaque, and so you don't know how good your show or your film is doing. And it's the same thing like with my books. I know how much my books are selling. I know when they're selling. I know what parts of the world my books are selling in, so I know exactly how to cater if I need to.
mm.
Um, those are the things that are really important to me. And also, I love direct feedback. I love it when someone can just message me and say, "Hey, I love this show. I thought this was a little problematic," because that person might have a perspective that no one on my team does, and that perspective might be completely influential in like something that I do going forward. So I really appreciate like the strides that technology has made in those aspects.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think, I would have never thought to start a podcast, but being able to have the means to be able to do that efficiently and for, a reasonable cost, as opposed to having to try to pitch a deal to a radio, network or a conglomerate to say, hey, I really have this idea. Like no one would ever. So I think it's, yeah. So I think it's neat that you're just like, you know what? Like I know my worth. I know there's an audience for it. I'm just going to put it out there. And I don't have to rely on historic means of production to be able to do that. I can just do it on my own. So let's wrap up by talking about what's next for you. What are some other works that you want to highlight? Where can people find you? Where can people access your work?
Oh yeah. Well, I have a website, chancecalloway.com.
Okay.
Uh, and so that links to all of my stuff. So
Okay.
I'm working on I'm always working on a lot of things. But I have some music that's coming out. I'm producing a gospel album that actually does delve into I guess the hypocrisy about Christianity in its relation with queerness and
Wow.
homosexuality.
Wow.
Um, because again, that's a gap that I want to fill. I'm just like,
Mhm.
okay, like a lot of people in the church like to say, oh, but no, we don't care. Okay, let's see how much you don't care.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, I also have other music coming out. I'm actually on the festival circuit right now with two films. So I have a film called Ram Like the Verb, which is an animated short that I rotoscoped from footage, unused footage from Pretty Dudes that we were working on
Okay.
before the pandemic,
Okay.
starring Charlotte Day and Yoshi Sadar. So really excited about that. It's
Awesome.
premiering at the Leeds Film Festival next month. And then I don't know if you can see well, of course you can, behind me in
Yeah,
my
no, it's awesome. Yeah, describe your background and
yeah, so this is a
talk about
still from a music video, I Know Him So Well, which is a cover of the show tune from Chess, by recorded with my friend AJ Raphael. And the song is already out, and the music video we animated with Studio Goblin. They're these amazing animators out of London, and I told them I wanted to create a queer love story that didn't center on trauma.
it.
Uh,
Mm,
and that's what this still behind me is from. And so that is premiering at a different film festival. All the names are escaping me right now, but
it's
that one's
okay.
yeah. The One Fluid Night Festival, also in
Okay.
London this year. And so I'm really excited about that. I have the next season of Pretty Dudes is called Pretty Dudes the 626. And we're kind of just leaning into the controversy. This one actually is an all Asian lead cast.
All
Um,
right.
I'm really excited about it. We've got some amazing performers, including Cesar Cipriano, Chris Lamb, and Wilson Lai. And basically, it tells a story about a group of queer friends celebrating different occasions throughout the year. And I don't want to ruin it, but it's amazing. So like, just make sure you're
Yep.
following Prelude's Web on all socials wherever we're at, just to stay updated.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And we're going to make sure that we have all of your information in the show notes and all that, so that way people can access your work easily and connect with you. But unfortunately, like we're running out of time. I could talk to you forever. There's so many different perspectives that we of taking this conversation. This could have easily been like a 5 hour conversation because your work just intersects on so many different levels that are interesting to me. So spirituality, mental health, historically marginalized and oppressed communities, um, just so many different levels that we could have just taken the conversation. But I think we did a good job of just talking about all of those things.
mhm.
But there's so much more I could always talk about with my guests, including you, Chance. But we're going to wrap it up. But thank you so much, Chance, for coming onto the program, talking about your work. I'm really happy to hear of the success you have, and I wish you continued success in all of your endeavors and all of the work that you're doing. I'm going to encourage all my listeners, please go check out Chance's work. Like I said, I'm going to have all the details in the show notes, so please just check him out, support him. Is there ways we can support you financially or otherwise? that
Oh
is
yeah,
the
I
details
have a
too?
Patreon.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a Patreon, and then we're about to open up. It's not going to be a crowdfunding campaign, but we're going to open up an option for people who want to support Pretty Dudes. Where if you want to drop it, and we welcome the support. So if you want to drop us some dollars that way,
Okay.
that's totally awesome because it's pretty much a self-funded project. And so any boost you want to give us, I'll take it.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So please listen, check out his work if you really appreciate it. Please support him. I know it's very important to independent creatives to get that support, not just by their eyes and their ears, but also with their wallets. And so if you can spend a few dollars, I know it's hard in this economy, but if you can do it, I know that Chance would be greatly, deeply grateful for that. But thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm gonna have to have you back on because I think there's just so much we could have talking about when it comes to really your philosophy of your craft and all of the different intersections that you touch. That I really could have just taken the conversation in, but we really wanted to make sure we highlighted Pretty Dudes and all of your other work. So thank you so much for coming on, Chance. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, y'all. And we'll see you next time on Some Random Thoughts. Take care.